Hi, everybody. So good to see you all. Welcome, welcome. All right, I'm just going to give everyone a minute to join. Looks like we've got lots of folks coming in, which is very exciting. Before we get started, I want to make sure that everything is working okay. So if you can see and hear me, I would love for you to drop in the chat um, a yes, that you can see and hear me, and then B, if you have any, let's see, if you have a favorite tip that you have, or if let's go with have you used Campfire before? Or do you know what proto-drafting is? Looks like lots of people can see and hear. Lots of people who've never used Campfire before. Yes, use Campfire. No, don't know proto-drafting. All new. Never used it, no idea. Never. So we've got a good mix, got a good mix here. I love Campfire and I am extremely excited to learn about proto drafting because I think writing better stories faster is something that we can all all use. So I want to cover a couple bits of housekeeping before I turn it over to Emery here. But we have about an hour together today. Towards the end of the session, Emery is going to share both the discount code for Campfire as well as some template codes that you can use. We'll put those on the screen, but I also have captured them, so I'll share them with you via email and on the hub page later. So if you don't see them or don't capture them at that point, don't panic, don't worry, it's all good. On that note, the replay will be available on the same hub page that you use to access this. It'll also go out via email, so you can access this recording if you want to take a look at it again. Or if you're watching this recording, you'll have access to the whole session. So go make sure you go back to the hub page for that. In terms of the session itself, please feel free to use the chat to connect with each other and connect with each other as participants. But if you have a question for Emery, please drop that into the Q&A button, which is in the middle center of your screen. That will help us just keep track of the questions. We're going to try to get to as many questions as we possibly can at the end, but putting them in the Q&A just helps me keep track of those so that I can make sure that we go through them. With all that being said, I think we're ready to begin. I am so thrilled to introduce Emery Glass, who is the community manager for Campfire. In Emery's spare time, she's an artist, world builder, author, and small indie publisher with a passion for dark fantasy, strong female characters, and meticulous attention to detail in lore. Her publications include the fantasy novelette Fall, Sacred Apple, and flash fiction collection 33 Tales of War. Emery, welcome. We are so happy to have you here.
Hi.
I will
All
turn it
right,
over
I'm
to you.
excited to be here. All right, awesome. While I was looking at the chat, I saw a lot of people saying that they don't know what proto drafting is. Great, because that's the first thing we're going to go over. Um, so before we get too much into detail with it, though, I'm going to explain some common pitfalls that people might be having with their stories that I have seen very frequently, I have encountered myself, and how proto drafting can help. So the very first thing that you want to do when you start outlining a story, which is essentially what proto drafting is you are going to want to fall in love with your story. Some common roadblocks to this are not having a real plan, getting trapped in the vicious cycle of editing, lacking focus, the story is all over the place, things are happening to the character, not because of them, the plot is dragging things around, you're meandering, there's unimportant details, there's things that can be condensed, the scenes or the characters are lacking motivation. And if you are a fantasy writer like me, I am sure that you have had an issue with world builder's disease. For those of you who are not familiar with that term, that is a funny thing that we say when we just can't stop world building and we're not actually writing a story, but we are just building out the details of the world all the time. So the things that you can do to make this successful, your storytelling endeavor, is coming up with a plan, sticking to that plan, and not allowing yourself to get distracted with world building or the other fun stuff like designing covers or marketing or illustrations or talking about writing but not actually writing, or again, editing when you don't have a full draft written. In other words, the common theme here is don't start fires to put out other fires. So the key to success is that the very first person you have to make care about your story is you. This is why it's very important to fall in love with your story enough that you are willing to do something like an outline if that benefits your writing process. So if you aren't excited about what is coming next in the story, the readers are going to be twice as unexcited. If you're bored, they're going to be twice as bored. If you're not enthusiastic, they're going to be twice as unenthusiastic. You have to care about your story. So when you are in the process of falling in love with your story, there is this period that I call the cupcake period, where you love your story, you only want to talk about it. It's something that you are constantly thinking about and you always want to be around it and working on it. This is the point where you should capitalize on that period with a protodraft. So what is a protodraft? So proto is a prefix from Greek, which means all of the words you see here on the screen. Therefore, your protodraft is your first draft, your source draft, your parent draft, all of these other words. So effectively what we are doing when we are protodrafting, we are telling ourselves the story in very light detail, but we're going very in depth with it. The graphic that you see here is what I personally call the inverted pyramid of protodrafting. So you start way at the bottom with one sentence that describes your entire book, and you keep building on these steps, which we're going to go through all of them, to eventually get your protodraft, after which you start writing the manuscript. How can Campfire help with this? For those of you who don't know what Campfire is, it is a writing software that helps you get organized, plan things, keep track of things, and you can even learn about writing and world building and all of that, as well as read other people's books that they have published. It is free to sign up for. You do not have to put in any payment information when you sign up for a free account. And there are currently 18 modules. But for the purposes of protodrafting, to make things easier, we are just using the encyclopedia and characters modules for the templates. And a little bit about me, in case you do not know who I am, which is very likely. I am the community manager over at Campfire. As Haley mentioned, I am a dark fantasy author and world builder. I've been writing since 2010, got published when I was 18, and I've written a lot of things in Campfire. If you have not heard of protodrafting before, that is probably because it is a word I made up. So this is a method of outlining and plotting that I developed over the course of several years to help me write books more efficiently. I had been having to go through 10, 15, 20 drafts of books to get them coherent. But with this method, I've been able to knock that all the way down to 3. So I'd call that a success, and I hope that it is helpful for you. All right, so very, very first step of protodrafting. In one sentence, describe your entire story. You can use 15 to 20, maybe 30 words. Do not use any character names or story-specific words. There's a method that I learned from the Novelist Bootcamp by Todd A. Stone, where when you're doing this process, you say, in setting, character must overcome obstacle or else consequences. This establishes where a story takes place, who it's about, and the stakes and the problem, the conflict of the story, which is really all you need to know for right now. What you should not do, however, when you are doing this step is something like, in Middle-earth, Frodo must take the One Ring to Mordor, or else Sauron will take over the world. The reason for this is because what is Middle-earth? Who's Frodo? What's the One Ring? Why does it need to go to Mordor? Who or what is that? Who is Sauron, and why does he care about a ring? You are giving yourself too many specific, detailed questions to answer. So instead, what you should do, in a desperate world, an unlikely hero must undertake an arduous journey to hellish horizons and destroy a magical artifact, lest the Dark Lord reclaim it and bring death to all. This is a better way of framing this because you know what a desperate world is, you know what an unlikely hero is, arduous journey, hellish horizons. It's specific and it's detailed, but you're giving yourself room to expand and change things as you need to. And for this first step, that is very important. So once you have come up with your first initial sentence, you have the seed of your story, you can move on to the basic protodraft. There are 3 stages of protodrafting: basic, intermediate, and advanced. We're going to spend a little bit more time talking about the basic protodraft because this is the skeleton of your plot, and it is very important that this is organized properly and you understand the process, because we're going to continue it in the next one. So once you have your 1-sentence story summary, you can make a 5-sentence brief. This part might seem a little confusing, but once you get the hang of it, it makes sense. So that 1 sentence we are going to expand into 5. I use Roman numerals for this. You can come up with any other method that is beneficial to you. You don't have to use Roman numerals. So we'll have sentences 1 through 5. Sentences 1, 3, and 5 are the beginning, middle, and end of the story. These sentences do not have to logically connect to one another when you write them. You can make huge leaps here. We'll fill in everything else as we go along. So sentence 1, what happens in the beginning? What is the original state of things for the main character or characters? And if you have room, again, this should just be a sentence, you could put in, what changes that for them. Sentence 3, what is the most game-changing event of the story? The midpoint, the middle, the big thing. Sentence 5, what happens at the end? How does it resolve? How is their life changed? Again, you should really, really try to stick to a single sentence here, 15 to 30 words. You can use semicolons if you need to, but I would not over rely on that method. So you may be wondering, well, what about sentences 2 and 4? That is the next thing that you are going to do. You can see here, this is a screenshot from the template, kind of shows how it's laid out in here. And then beneath this in the template, there is a spot for you to put it all in order. So the sentences 2 and 4, and this will be a pattern throughout this entire thing, are transitional sentences. You are transitioning from the beginning to the middle in sentence 2, and then you're transitioning from the middle to the end with sentence 4. So sentence 2 is the clearest or biggest step that the main character takes to get from the beginning to the middle. And sentence 4 is the biggest, clearest, most interesting step that they take to get from the middle to the end. And even still right now, this does not have to make a whole lot of sense. You can kind of rely on, I'll figure that out later, as long as you are putting in the main, major, most big, interesting things that are happening. That's really what we're looking for here. So once you have sentences 1, 3, 5, 2, and 4, you can put them all in order. And once you do that, we will move on to the next step of the basic protodrafting process by expanding these into 5 more sentences each. So sentence 1 is going to turn into 5 sentences, sentence 2 into 5 sentences, etc. For right now, we're just going to talk about sentence 1, but all of these are going to follow the exact same pattern. So sentence 1, the beginning. We will split that into 5 sentences, which for right now we'll call A, B, C, D, and E. These kick off the book and describe the direct lead up to what happens in sentence 2. So you're going from the beginning to the transition to the middle. So like the first portion of the book, first couple of chapters. Again, similar to the last pattern, the same as the last pattern, I strongly recommend that you do A, C, and E first, and then return to sentences B and D. Sentences A, C, and E represent the main actions, the beginning, the middle, and the end, taking place in sentence 1, whereas B and D are the main consequences and the transitions in between those sentences. So you have A, the main action and the beginning of the beginning. You have B, the consequence that follows and the transition to the middle of the very beginning. You have C, which is the middle of the beginning. And then you have D, which is the transition from the middle to the end of the beginning and is also a consequence. And then you have E, which is the transition from the middle to the end of the beginning and is also another action. I recommend that you do this in this order because you cannot have a consequence without an action. So by thinking of the action, that allows you to come up with potential consequences, because one of the things that a lot of the authors struggle with is coming up with the transitional things that are still interesting to read about. So giving yourself room to think through and ponder all of these different consequences that could happen and what would be the most interesting to have to deal with is a really good way to avoid that. And all of the rest of these sentences follow the same formula. If this seems really confusing while I'm talking through it, that is totally fair, which is why in the templates for this, I have every single sentence laid out. So sentence 1, A through E, and I have them in the order of writing and then chronological order, and the same for the rest of the sentences. And it even has reminders of what is supposed to be in there so that you don't lose your place. So once you are done, you will have realized that you have sentences A through Y, but you're missing a letter of the alphabet. So sentence Z is still very, very important. This is the character's final reaction. It is a reflection on everything that has happened to them in the story. And this is critically important for tying off the reader's emotional journey. This is the end. It is the resolution. You need to give readers that cherry on top at the end so that they want to come back and read more of your books and have a fond memory of the one that you wrote that they just finished. This is regardless of plot structure, regardless of anything else, there has to be some kind of reflection at the end. The main question that you can ask yourself here when you are writing sentence Z is, imagine that the main character or characters are looking at themselves in the mirror. Do they like what they see? And that can provide a very good foundation for you to write sentence Z based on. So now you have your Roman numeral sentences and your letter sentences, and these make up the basis of the basic protodraft. So what do we do next? Well, you could stop here. This is a usable outline. Some writers do better with having a lot of freedom where they can fill in the gaps as they are drafting. Some people feel that outlining in depth can kind of tire you out and makes you not want to, really write anymore. You lose interest in the story. But having done this for every book that I have written since I was 16, I would encourage you to try it for at least one book, try the whole process, see if it works. If it doesn't, that's totally fine. But I promise you, this has really, really worked very well for me. So the next step in the intermediate protodraft is that we are going to flesh out our plot skeleton. I'm sure that some of you are wondering, what about characters? Because we haven't really talked about characters. We're doing very non-specific terms, and the same for world building. That is the next step. It is the beginning of the intermediate protodraft. While you are fleshing out your story skeleton, the first step is to make a chara chart. This template is in the characters module on Campfire, if you would like to use it. So a story that doesn't have any characters is a little bit like a car with no wheels. It's missing a key component of what makes the story work. One of the things that I really highly recommend, if you don't already have an idea of who your character is or what their role is or what they're like or anything, is to look into the 12 character archetypes. Keep in mind that not every book is going to need all 12 of the character archetypes. That can get a bit much, but it is still something that is helpful if you are just kind of looking for a direction. And the really great thing is you do not have to use them just as they are. You can mix and match traits from different things that you like. This makes more realistic characters. So what I would do if you are still searching for a character is pick 3 or 4 of these archetypes, kind of mix and match the traits as you like, as they seem, appropriate for what the story is, and try to pick archetypes that don't necessarily get along the greatest. Even if the characters are supposed to be allies, conflict drives stories. So even if the friends or the allies or the lovers or whatever are kind of butting heads a little bit and they're not really on the same page, but they generally want the same thing, that can still make for some pretty good drama, some pretty good friction, and make the story even more interesting. So the main thing that we are asking right now is, who are your characters? All of their physical traits aside, who are they? There is a quote from the Fellowship of the Ring, which I love. It actually inspired a novel of mine, this single quote. It is spoken by Tom Bombadil, and he says, "Who are you yourself, alone and nameless?" This is the question you should be asking the characters that you are cycling through for a potential main character. Think about what kind of personality, what kind of psyche, what kind of emotional person would be the most interesting to put through this plot skeleton. Who would be not necessarily the best person, but the most interesting, potentially the most incompatible person to put through this story? What will make this character sweat is what you're looking for. That's the kind of thing that creates drama, creates friction, creates conflict. These are very good things to be doing when you're coming up with characters. But we have some tips. So when you are looking at the character chart template, as you can see, it is rather long, and it is basically just lists of facts about them. You do not have to, and really, really shouldn't, character chart every single character that you want to appear in the book. These are for pivotal characters that really you need to know as much as you can about them. So you should prioritize. So if you were writing Lord of the Rings, if at the absolute maximum, I would recommend Frodo, Gandalf, Samwise, Saruman, and Aragorn. Of those 5, depending on the time and how much time you want to spend on this, I might just do Frodo, Gandalf, and Sam. It kind of depends on what you want, but again, try to do fewer rather than more. The second tip is that the characters that you fill out character charts for are not locked in to whatever you wrote in the character chart. Protodrafts are living documents. They are intended to be changed and redone in parts as you continue the protodrafting process, and eventually writing. The characters are going to evolve. Please let them. Just make sure that you are taking notes on things so that you don't confuse yourself later. The third tip is you don't have to know every single answer right away. There are lots of different things that you can fill out in the character chart template. I tried to cover things that would be as relevant to as many genres as possible. I've even included questions in it in some of the text panels if you get stuck or you don't know exactly what to say. But you still don't have to answer every single thing before you can consider yourself done with character charting. Some of the most interesting elements about these characters are going to arise and evolve as you write. This is perfectly fine. Please let that happen. These are more of a starting point and then a running log that you can keep about information about the character, all in one neat package so you know where it is and can keep track of it and don't have to go, wait, I changed the character's eye color to blue, or did I? You can come and see and know. And then lastly, character charts are for your reference. So on Campfire, you are able to publish your books, and you are also able to do things like add collaborators to your projects or use link sharing if you just want to share it with a friend or something. I would encourage that you keep character charts for your reference only and do not publish these for other people to look at, or, I mean, feedback is fine, but I would not use these as your, I am presenting this character to the world thing. There are a couple reasons for this. One, the sheer volume of information is more suitable for a writer's purposes than a reader's purposes because there's not a lot of context. And then also for people who are just trying to learn something cool about the character, it can just be overwhelming. As an example of this, I have put here an example of the character chart template. So this is what someone would see the first time that they opened it. It will look like this, and it's a bunch of lists and then panels at the bottom that have just answers to questions and things like that and notes. Whereas this is one of my public character elements. So you can see this is very different. It is not list heavy. There's a lot of text. There is a lot of context there. There's other things for people to click on so they can learn more and more and more about the world. This is why I would not suggest a Kara chart for this kind of purpose. So once you have figured out your character's nature, it's time to figure out their nurture, which is what you're doing with the world building section. Regardless of what genre you are writing, every story is going to need some level, some kind, some depth of world building. Some will need less, some will need more. It depends on what exactly you are doing. So with this section, we're just going to go, even if you're writing high fantasy or epic fantasy, into brief detail about the most need to know things that you have to have sorted out in order to hit the ground running with the story. This is not the time for a deep dive into the setting. Do not let yourself get distracted. And again, just like in the Kara chart portion, you do not need to know everything all at once. It is okay to leave questions blank. In fact, I recommend that if you're just starting out and you're just trying to get to the point where you can start writing, you really only do maybe 3 to 5 in each section. So the cool thing about this template is I have set it up kind of like a game. So there are 6 categories and there are 10 questions in each of these 6 categories for a total of 60. I tried to cover as many bases as possible and make it as genre non-specific as possible to be the most helpful. So the 6 categories are who, what, when, where, why, and how. These are the most important questions that you can ask yourself in any part of storytelling. If you have an idea, who is doing it, what are they doing, when are they doing it, where are they doing it, why are they doing it, and then how. Those 5 questions will get you out of a lot of binds, especially when it comes to world building. So to play the game, if you would like to, just grab a D6, a D10, which are a 6-sided die or a 10-sided die, or you can search a dice roller online. Roll the 6-sided die to get your question category and your 10-sided die for the question that you should answer. You do not have to do these in order. It's actually potentially helpful to not, because your answer to one question could help inform your answer to another question. And also, lastly, on this topic, when you are answering these world building questions, you want to be very broad and generalized. You don't have to get specific about anything unless your story calls for it. So if you're writing about just one city, you can get more specific. But if you're writing about a country or a kingdom or, you know, a coalition or things like that, it would probably be beneficial to just kind of broad stroke generalize things so that you're not spending too much time. So once you have sorted out your characters and world building, it is time to go into your intermediate protodraft. For right now, we're going to say that sentences A through Z that you wrote in the basic protodraft represent the essence of a single chapter in your story. Chapters are a bit like episodes of a television series in that they have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And again, they have the 2 transitions from the beginning to the middle and the middle to the end. So you can see the formula right here: beginning, transition, middle, transition, end. We're still using the same formula here. Something that is very important when it comes to outlining chapters, and why I encourage people to do so, especially if they are struggling with finishing a book or finishing an outline, or if they are new to writing, is that this really helps alleviate sagging middles, the story losing focus or going off into the weeds, you running out of steam because you don't know where to go if you're struggling with writer's block, leaving too many things up in the air that trip you up and cause you to lose steam again. You already know what is going to happen. You just have to write it now. And also, alongside thinking of them as episodes of a TV show, you could think of chapters like a game of dominoes. The first action is going to have a consequence, which is going to cause another action and another consequence, so on and so forth. The next thing we are going to do is continue the previous formula from the basic outline, except this time you are going to be able to write up to 3 sentences describing what happens in each part of the chapter. So the way that I recommend that you do this, and again, I have this entire thing in a template, sentences A through Z, all of it is templated, and I have put directions kind of in there for where you are in the story and what goes where, so that nothing gets too confusing. But if you're just going to do this on a Google Doc or something, put your Roman numeral sentence up at the top from your 5-sentence brief, your letter sentence beneath that, which is your chapter for right now. And then beneath that, you can put the beginning, which can have 3 sentences, the middle, 3 sentences, the end, 3 sentences, the beginning, middle, transition, 3 sentences, and the middle end transition, another 3 sentences, for a total of 15 at the max for your chapter outline. All 26 sentences follow this same exact formula for this. And then once you have done that, you're actually almost done creating your protodraft. However, this next step, the penultimate step before you get to the end, might end up taking a bit longer, because this is where we are really going to go into detail and kind of abandon a little bit the formula that we have been using so far. This is the advanced protodraft. These are where you're going to expand those 15 sentences from your chapters into scenes. So some very important things about this part. You do not have to have flawless execution here. You are not writing the actual book. This is for your reference so that you understand it and you know the atmosphere or the vibe or the direction that you want the story to go in. You do not need to tear your hair out over this, and you also do not need to know the placement of the antagonist's freckle on his elbow or something like that. You don't have to go that far deep into it. As an example, I have one of my protodrafts is 5,000 words long, and one of my other novels' protodrafts is 18,000 words long. It depends on the length of the story that you are going for. It depends on the level of detail that you are wanting that's going to benefit you where you currently are in your writing craft, and just doing kind of what works for you. Things to keep in mind, continued. Protodrafts are, again, for your eyes only. You can absolutely share these, for feedback with other authors to see if it makes sense in general before you start writing, but I wouldn't necessarily share this with readers. You can make things up as you go along. I am sure that there are still some gaps that you need to fill in from the earlier incarnations of the protodraft. It's okay to also include weird and hand-wavy things. I have included stuff like, and then this character goes and eats a snack or something, because I can't think of something right then for them to do. The important thing here is just maintaining forward momentum. You can also include stuff that's not really, it doesn't seem like it would fit in an outline, but dialogue, descriptions, just prose or things. If you feel inspired while you're writing a scene outline, it's totally fine to include that. But the other main takeaway here is that so far we have been very, very formulaic with the actions and the consequences and the beginnings and the middles and the ends and the transitions and all of that. That is the more technical side. But we are now going to put our more creative minds to work here while still saving the artwork for the actual manuscript. The only thing right now that is going to continue in the advanced protodraft is that every scene still has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. You can add the transitions if you want. I think that that's helpful, but that's also something that you can kind of come up with on the fly if you don't feel like getting that detailed. And as far as endings go in this portion, you are welcome to write cliffhangers or leave things kind of unresolved, as long as there is some sort of tie off at the end and it's not abrupt or something like that. Also, while you are doing your advanced protodraft, you are probably going to realize that some of those chapters that we outlined are not really chapters. Some should be combined, some should be divided up some more, some are just a scene. They don't really need to be their own full chapter. Some of the transitions are not going to have made very much sense, and you're going to need to change them. Throughout this entire process of the advanced protodraft, You're going to be adding, removing, combining, condensing, doing all sorts of stuff with it. And all of that is perfectly normal. You did not do it wrong. You are just evolving the story and telling it to yourself and understanding the story so that you can be more successful when you go write your actual manuscript. Couple tips and tricks here, just to reiterate a couple things. You don't need to have flawless execution. You don't need to document every detail. You're going to change things, have better ideas. You don't need to stick to a formula. The formula is baked in at the basic and intermediate protodraft levels. The only caveat is every scene has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And very, very importantly, even if it seems small, make sure that you are updating your protodraft with the changes that you are making, so that when you are going to edit your manuscript, which will be different from your protodraft as you write, you are not causing a headache for yourself because you can't remember when or why you changed certain things. So please make sure that you are taking notes and remembering that your protodraft is a living document. It is not set in stone. And also, as a point of clarification, when I did this workshop for the Campfire community in October, someone had brought up that I, at this point, stopped saying advanced protodraft and I'm just saying protodraft. When you get to this point where you're starting to update the protodraft, I mean the advanced protodraft, not the basic or the intermediate. You can stop working on those if you so choose and just update the one that is more about the scenes, because that's realistically what you're most likely going to be using as you are writing the manuscript. All right, so congratulations. At this point, you should now have completed your advanced protodraft. You have that story known like the back of your hand. You know it up, down, left, right, sideways, diagonal, every possible way. You have completely thought it through. The very last thing, and what to do with your protodraft after all of this, when you're getting ready to write your manuscript, is a process that I call Agile Editing. So what I mean by this is we are no longer, now that we have a protodraft, and this is a promise I have made myself, and I hope that you make this promise to yourself too, we do not edit our stories now while we are writing them. The protodraft is going to help alleviate a lot of these problems as you are writing, because even if you're changing things while you're writing, the thing that you can then go edit if you need to is the protodraft, which will be easier because there's less there than in an actual manuscript. And when you go back to do a full edit of your manuscript, you have the protodraft that you can look at and say, oh, in scene number 10, I changed the character's hair color. So from scene 10 onward, I need to make sure that the character is brunette now, or something like that. Manuscript drafts from now on, if you're using the protodrafting method, are a one-way street. Do not go back, do not change course. Make sure that you are doing that in the protodraft. It is always going to be easier to edit the outline and then use that to edit your manuscript, because there's just less of a volume of information. Well, congratulations to everyone. You have made it through the protodrafting process. So these are the template codes that we have. You will have a chance to see these again. They're not going to disappear forever. There are a couple different ways that you can access these templates. So if you want them piecemealed out, so you just want the basic protodraft, and then you want a different element for the Kara charting questions and a different one for the Kara chart template, you can download them separately. Or if you would like to have it all in one encyclopedia element and then all in one character element, I have a all-in-two template. They're different modules, so I can't do all in one. But that is it is very long. I will warn you. It is a very long document if you have it all in one, but that saves space if that's a concern, and just keeps it all contained. So with all that being said, we also here at Campfire wanted to give you a thank you for attending this webinar with us, which is 20% off of Campfire. So this will give you complete unlimited access to all modules, and this is not an auto-renewing subscription. You can also still create an account for free if you want to just try out Campfire before you put money up for it. That is totally fine. And this code will be active through the 31st of December, 2023. So I think that is all I have, Haley. If there are any questions that people have, I am happy to answer them.
Yes, we've got
And
a ton of questions.
oh, awesome.
So I will just jump right into them. A couple of people have just been asking for a little bit of an overview of Campfire and if it's like Fictionary or kind of how to use it. So do you have just a quick overview of kind of what Campfire is, and how to best use it? I know that's a very big topic, but
Yeah, sure. Let me mosey on over to Campfire and I can just show everyone. So, oh, you can see my analytics. Oops. This is a project that I have recently published on Campfire. It's the most filled out, so I figured this would be a good example. So this is my project's homepage. This is my homepage, so my author dashboard, basically. This isn't something that a reader would see if you published your story. I've got a little image here. I've got recent elements that I've worked on, pinned elements, which are things that I have specifically chosen. I have notes to myself, which I just put my blurb here so that I can easily grab it. And there are also some stats. So you can see how many hours you've put in, how many words you've written, the number of elements that you've created. And the neat thing about Campfire is that these are called panels, and you can resize them and lengthen or shorten them as necessary. You can move them around, so you can change the orientation of things to something that you prefer. And again, there are 18 different modules. So let's say that you are creating a character. The element, which is what the page is called within the module, has all of those benefits too. This is entirely panel based, so you can arrange things however you want. You can make things as big or as small as you want. You can change the title of things. You can add information. You can do attributes and lists. For example, that this is an attributes panel. You can also write in your own custom attribute in here if none of these are suitable for you. And another neat feature, if I can find it, might be in a different character, is that you can set aliases. So for example, this character has a couple of different things that she's called, such as the Blue Queen. So throughout Campfire, if I ever say the Blue Queen in text somewhere, it will link to her page, even though her page is titled her legal name, basically. So you can do a bunch of different stuff with this. There are multiple different kinds of panels. There's text, list, stats, tables, images, links, attributes. And this is generally the same throughout all of the modules. The manuscript module is one that most writers love because that is where the actual book is written. So you can do a lot here. You've got, your standard heading, all of the standard tools that you'd use for Google Docs or Word or things like that. Different fonts. You can change the color of the text. You can highlight text, all of that. One thing to note here is that if you see these highlights, that means that you can click on that and there's another element that you can go read. So for example, this is talking about the Kandrish language. So if I click on that, it will take me to the element for that language. This will not appear like this for the reader, though, within the manuscript module. So if you publish your story to lessen distractions and confusion, if they accidentally click something, for example, they'll just see the text. There's no link in the manuscript module specifically. There is no limit to the number of words or chapters or anything like that if you use the paid version. If you're using the free version of Campfire, it is 25,000 words. And you get a little word count thing down here. This one's 803, for example. There is also locations. So anything that you ever want to know about a particular country, you are able to put in here. It has all of the same different kinds of panels, as I mentioned, with characters, text, list, stats, table, image, links, attributes, and you can use all of these to different effects. For example, I have a link panel here, and I have it set to show works featuring Kandrasev, which is the country that this takes place in. So I have set this to articles, which are from the encyclopedia module, and it has now linked to the explanation of what the story is about, effectively, is what this is. You can do the same thing with characters, with religions, really any module. There's also the ability to add pages. So you can have more room, different pages, all of that kind of thing to set things up as you like. Not all modules allow you to do pages, but the vast majority of them do. My personal favorite is the maps module, because you can upload a map, you can use Incarnate, you can draw your own map, you can, whatever suits your mapping skills, you are able to do. And you can create layers for this. So I have a couple different layers here just to make it easier. The first layer has zones in it. So what those are is I went through and I outlined this entire, let's call it a queendom. And now whenever you mouse over it, it will show you, I can get it to go away, there we go. It will show you a pop-up of that element that you have linked it to. There are also, if you take this away, now you can actually mouse over the things that are beneath the zones. So I've got one of my cities here, another city here. I have some stuff for the different geographical features. It's really limitless as far as if you can think of something to do with it, you can probably do it. There's no wrong way to set things up. If it works for you, excellent, we love to see it. There's the research module. I personally use this to create playlists to share with people of songs that I listened to while I was writing a particular book. You can link all sorts of other stuff, though. You can link articles or PDFs or really anything that you used in the research process. I will say, as we are coming up on the time when monetization is out of our early access period, the only module that you cannot monetize on Campfire is research, because 9 times out of 10, you are linking to things that other people have written or created. There is also the timeline, which kind of gives a couple of different ways that you can view different events that happen in your world. So for example, here we have one of my main characters' birthdays. You can have, you know, the magnitude, the type of event that it is. And again, you can write your own thing. You can see with the X's here, these are ones that I have added, but these are the standard ones. You can link it to other things. You can do a lot. You can also set a date for when this happens, which is based on the calendar that you create. This is our newest module, and it's one of the most fun to play around with. So you can create your own fantasy calendar according to basically whatever you would like to do with it. You come up to the properties tab and you can set up your eras, your months, your weeks, your moon cycles, the seasons, all sorts of stuff. And you have a lot of control over how you want these things to pan out. One note here, so if you create an event in the calendar, it will not populate in the timeline. But if you create an event in the timeline, it will populate in the calendar. So just keep that in mind if you are interested in doing a lot of things with time. If you'd like to know more about calendar building, I recently wrote a series of articles, which you can find on the blog portion of our website, all about calendars. There's probably 8 different articles about how to create calendars. We also have arcs, which are a little interesting. They're not really what you would think of from just the name. These are and I don't have a very good example because I haven't used them very much. These are essentially showing changes to statistics that you've put in other modules over time. So for example, I think this one is perhaps a better, or perhaps not. I may have gotten rid of it. So if I had a more filled out one, there would be a graph that shows after you link different events to it, the changes over time, for example, in a population or a currency's worth, or how many people are speaking a language, or just anything to do with the numbers and time. It will show a relationship between those things. Speaking of relationships, we have the relationships module. I unfortunately don't have one for this one yet. That looks visually very similar to systems, so I can show you this. You get a little flow chart like this, and instead of linking other things that aren't characters with the relationships module, you link characters together. So you can show familial relationships, friendships, you know, foes and different factions and things like that. Species systems works basically the same, but this is for everything but characters. Then we have the encyclopedia. This is kind of just what it sounds like on the tin. It's articles outside of the manuscript module, and you can set them up almost like Wikipedia with all of the information that you could ever want to know about a specific topic in your setting that does not really fit anywhere else. Or you could use it for whatever you want. Again, there's no way, there's no wrong way to use Campfire. The magic system. This is another one that I do not have a very good example of because I haven't used it much myself yet. But you can use this to tell people everything there is to know about magic. You have the rules. If you click the guidebook, you can add different spells and what they do. And just kind of spill the beans about everything there is to know. Species, this is a fun one. So here you can, I have two different ones. You can add images, pictures, that kind of thing, and go over, you know, if you have elves or orcs or something that you made up, or robots or whatever, dinosaurs, anything you want, you can talk about the specifics of those species and anything that you would need to know. And again, like the other ones, you've got text, list, stats, table, image, links, attributes. There are a lot of modules. Cultures, this kind of ties in with locations. It's effectively the same thing, but this is more focused on, like, as opposed to where a particular group is, how they behave or what they do, or, you know, what they believe in, things like that. Then there is items. Currently, I use this for things like coinage, which you could use it for anything that's an item. Just going over, you know, what it is, how it works, all of that kind of thing. Languages is a very interesting one. So you can set up a script. You could even use one that you make up if you upload it. It has the IPA symbology. So if you are super into conlanging, you can add that in. And then you can go through and assign, you know, the part of speech and definitions and all of that kind of thing. Then the last two we have are religions and philosophies. So these two are basically the same again as everything else, with all of the different panels that you can add, but this is more of an organizational thing so that you can have, you know, all of your religions are together and all of your philosophies, and a lot of the options for attributes that are just there are different because it's focused on, you know, religion and spirituality or philosophy. So yeah, that is as brief an overview as I can give of how Campfire works. It's a lot to take in, but I really recommend that you try it. It is so very helpful. It's basically your own personal Wikipedia about your book.
Amazing. A couple of people have asked a couple of additional questions. So One is just, is there a big difference between Campfire and program like Scrivener in terms of organizing and creating the parts of a novel?
Um, it's been a minute since I've used Scrivener. Let me think. I would say that Campfire is different. From what I recall, the last time I used Scrivener, I do not believe there is an online version of it. Campfire has a browser version. There's also a desktop app that you can download that you can use in offline or online mode. So if you're on an airplane or something and you want to use Campfire, the desktop app will let you do that. And then you can sync the offline mode to the online servers and have it there for you when you want to work online again. We also have a mobile app, so you can campfire on the go if you want to. And I would personally say that from what I remember of Scrivener, Campfire has a lot more versatility and how you want to set things up. For example, the colors and the fonts and the background and everything that you see here, that is a custom theme that I created. We have a couple that are just, things that we've come up with that people might get use out of. We actually have theme and template libraries. So if you don't want to come up with your own, you can look at things that other people have made and import them into your story and have a beautiful setup however you would like. And the organization, from what I remember again with Scrivener, it seems a lot more versatile. You have a lot more ability to organize things in the way that works for you, how you would like to do it.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's see if we can get through just a couple more quick questions before we are out of time. Mrs. Boone asks, can you use a proto draft with a work in progress? So if you're just in the middle of a story.
Yeah, the way that you approach that might be a little bit different because you do already know what happens. In that case, what I would do is probably not really start with the one sentence, but kind of go back through the story and try to write down like the major things that are happening up to the point where you've written. So the main major thing that happens in the beginning, the main major thing that happens in the middle, and the major thing that connects those two things, and kind of work from there.
Great. Shauna asks, does this structure apply if you have more than one point of view, or for instance, if you have two different stories that then meet?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I have used this method for writing a story that has 5 different point of view characters. The cool thing about this, and the way that I would recommend that you do it, because I've tried it other ways and this seems to work the best, is when you are in the from the get-go, the one sentence summary stage, you should write that one sentence once you have characters from all of their points of view. So from their point of view, what is happening in the story, and then write a basic outline for all of those characters. And then you can, if you can swing it as far as time and energy, an intermediate protodraft for all of them, but at the advanced stage, then instead kind of weave them all together in the order that they're going to, appear in the story, so that everything is still maintaining, logic and what is going on.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Emery. We're just about out of time. So I wanted to just cover a couple quick pieces of logistics that people have been asking. So I'm going to send out the template codes and the discount code to Campfire with the replay so that you can take a look at that and then watch this presentation again, because I know everybody's been saying in the chat that it was so amazing and they were furiously taking notes. So if you want to watch it again, you can see the replay. And then if you want to keep connecting with Emery or connect with Campfire as well, I'm putting the link to Campfire's Discord into the chat, so you can just join that. It's totally free. I'll send that out with the replay as well, so you can join. But that way you can keep in contact with Emery if you want to ask more questions or just, learn more about Campfire or connect with other writers. That is a great place to go. Emery, thank you so much. This has been so fantastic. Everybody in the chat has just absolutely loved it. And I'm just so impressed that you came up with this method completely by yourself. It's so cool.
Well, thank you. I had a great time. I really hope that people, get a lot of use out of it, and hopefully it helps. I love helping people. So I hope that I have succeeded in that endeavor.
Yes, everyone said yes, very much. Very impressive. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for joining. We will see you at our next event and have a great rest of your Tuesday, everybody. Bye.